Hey everybody, and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program RP-0. We are rejoining the crew of the SKS Mark II in low Earth orbit as they are preparing the space station module for deployment. They still have about 9 days and a whole lot of change to spend in orbit, and I think we're going to spend it with this module attached, seeing as how it does not have its own means of generating electricity, and we'd like to leave it with some topped off batteries. So maybe we'll just let it siphon off of our shuttle internal systems. We are going to give it a bunch of life support supplies so that it's not completely empty when the first crew arrives. Of course, we'll be topping it off more with the second flight of parts for the station, and then every subsequent flight that brings a crew to it will, of course, resupply it a little bit more on the way. And every new module we bring up, we can actually bring a whole lot of life support with us. The SKS shuttle carries enough life support to keep a crew of 7 around for like 100 days, crew of 3 around for a whole lot longer than that. So we have no shortage of extra stuff to dump on board, thankfully. We will also make sure that we can top off the thruster fuel for the tug module, and might as well get some extra thruster fuel in the station core itself so that we can continue to top off the tug module. Now I'm just pumping Airzine forward because I'm going to want it there later. So we'll just double check that we can disable crossfeed and lock batteries on the station core itself, which is now giving us a warning that it is running out of life support. But there's no one on board. It's just counting the 3 crew that we have in the shuttle cockpit, and that's it. So we're not really concerned about that. So we'll just make sure that our radiators are on, our fuel cells are pumping, and our solar panels are facing into the wind. And then we'll spend a lot of time warping while we wait to meet the requirements of this contract that more than pays for this flight. And of course, Kerbal Alarm Clock ruins that for us, kicks us out of time warp, and stops the counter from counting. Quick solution to that: F5, F9, and we're back in business. Our counter is back in counting, and just a quick double check, make sure numbers are numbering, and then we're back out to the map view to just let some time fly. Quick check of our electric charge. We are draining pretty substantially. That station core puts quite a burden on all of our equipment, so we're in no shortage of hydrogen and oxygen for the fuel cells. The panels are angled pretty appropriately. They're just not kicking out enough power to keep things going. So we're going to make sure that our scrubbers are turned off. We're actually going to deactivate both of our radiators. That doesn't buy us a whole lot, and just a quick adjustment to our solar panel angles into the sun, and that should keep us afloat for at least the next 4 days or so while we complete the terms of our contract, which we'll do here in map view because it has much less of a chance of giving anybody any kind of epilepsy. I'm sure the crew is well entertained, all green check marks down the board, and now we can just warp into the daylight. We're going to get this station core out of here. First thing first, we need to recharge some of the batteries on it, just to make sure that that tug can actually do its job. Once it's separated, the shuttle should be just fine generating all of its own power, so not really a huge deal there. We are just going to give it a little bit more life support supplies now that we know that the crew won't need them. They'll be deorbiting within a day or two, actually probably within a couple of hours. We just need to see if we can't hit Cape Canaveral. That's still a long time goal for this particular vessel, and we will kick the core out of the bay after decoupling the node and watch it gently float away. And we're going to switch to it. I'm actually going to relocate the tug to one of the side ports just to keep that top port open. We would like to attach the docking hub there, and that's coming up next time. And I don't know if this thing is going to have enough electric charge to do it on its own, because there's no means of generating electrical power up here yet. That's coming up next flight. Good planning on all counts there. You can see the electric charge moving down pretty swiftly, although when we go into time warp, it's going to go into sleep mode and be a whole lot gentler. And there's some docking ports trying to get those magnets to line up. We do have a solid connection, although not the best rotation if we have to tug this thing around, but That seems like a next flight problem, not this flight problem. So just a quick double check of our electric charge. We are generating power better, but we are going to have to wait a little bit to put our flight path across Florida. So I'm just trying to find the nice angle to observe it with, and looks like next orbit or so, we should be able to make a clean pass. So we'll just try to set up our node and move it around appropriately to try to bring ourselves down at an appropriate altitude. Somewhere between 45 and 55 kilometers is a very typical descent path for this. So in about an hour, we'll just make one more pass, let Florida slide itself underneath our flight plan, and then adjust our node a little bit. That might be a little too far out in retrospect, but I've been flying the Cerberus a lot more, which has a much longer cross-range glide slope than the shuttle. But, you know, old habits. Anyway, I'm going to turn you over to old me for the deorbit burn. Probably a little ahead of the curve, but we'll give it a taste and see what we can't sort out. I'm just going to do this periapsis thing manually because I think I want it to be a little higher than 40 something. I think we're going to go for 50 something. Shut down 54. That should be good. Kill that. And now we're going to balance our fuel. I'm going to lock this tank open because I always end up having to lock that tank open. But we'll try to get in as much balance here as we can. We do have a bunch of fuel in this tank. We should probably unlock, maybe distribute. So we'll just do the great shifting of masses here, trying to get as much of this fuel in the forward section of the spacecraft as we can. That will help us with stability coming in. Those top two tanks are really for balance when the OMS engines are in flight. We don't need them much after that. But with everything transferred around, almost everything anyway, I'll turn you back over to old me. Mandatory quick save. Quick look at the map. It is going to be a nighttime landing, unfortunately, but I'm hoping it will all go well. Really not liking the whole nighttime landing thing, but we'll see what happens. Alright, let's go ahead and get ourselves angled in. So we'll start the skateboard slide around and at least get ourselves facing somewhat to prograde. Probably need to be way above the current angle that we have now, but that'll be a later problem. Making sure all of our boxes are still checked. They are. We'll fold in our solar panels. Leave the fuel cells running for now. We do have to do a little bit of fuel balancing, moving a little bit from that rear tank to the fore section. Just a little bit. I'm leaving that bottom box for our rear tank that's inside the cargo bay open so that I can shift more fuel back there if I need to, or more fuel forward as needed. These thrusters get hungry after all. And then now that we are technically inside the very upper part of the atmosphere, we can actually just engage physics warp and let it glide itself in. It does hold that 45-degree pretty easily, this high up anyway. Once we get in a little bit lower and we start to need to put those tails into the wind a little more, we'll reduce that angle somewhere between 20 and 35, and we'll get a little bit of shimmy and wiggle. So I'll actually bring up atmospheric autopilot to manage most of this descent for me, which is nice because that means I can get up, walk around for a second, get myself a soda, go do something else for the 15 to 20 minutes this thing takes to actually cut its way through the atmosphere. Unfortunately, we are looking at a nighttime landing at Cape Canaveral, which does not make me very happy, but it is what it is. I don't know, we could have stayed in orbit for another many days to try to figure it out and land during the daytime. I just didn't really want to, and I don't know. Atmospheric autopilot is engaged, limiting us to about 15 degrees AOA, which is good because I think I really burned too soon on that retro, and we are coming in quite far away from the west coast even. This might make Florida a dream, if anything, so we're going to keep that angle about 10 degrees and just see if we can walk as much lift off of this thing as we can on our way back in, see if we can't help out our cross-range capability just by trying not to introduce as much drag as we would with normal 20 to 30 degree angle here during reentry, which does help out. No speed brakes on this thing, unlike the older Shuriken, so it doesn't really have that to help keep its butt planted, but it does do pretty well. This thing, stable as a rock on reentry, and atmospheric autopilot has absolutely no trouble keeping us pinned in, although you couldn't tell it from the way all those thrusters are firing. So still coming up on the west coast, about 6.5 kilometers per second. We did a pretty good job of not bleeding as much speed as we would have with a much higher angle, but it still does not look like we're going to make it quite to Florida. Still seeing though, but we're coming into the thicker bits of the air now, down to about 59 kilometers radar. Well, since we're over the ocean, our top altimeter is actually pretty accurate, but on the way back up, very briefly at around 60 kilometers, still maintaining more than 5 kilometers per second as we cross over the Gulf of Mexico while engulfed in flames. A pretty sight, nonetheless. Always fun when a reentry just goes so incredibly smoothly. We will shear all the way across Mexico before we get below 4 kilometers per second and on into the Gulf of Mexico. At this point, I was still very hopeful. We might actually be able to land, maybe not on a runway, but at least in Florida. Wouldn't that be nice? Almost all the way across Mexico. Our angle still looks pretty good, which is absolutely phenomenal, especially when you're me, and hitting Florida is extraordinarily difficult and takes way longer than I think it should, or way more attempts than it has any right to. But we'll be coming into the Gulf of Mexico at only 1.3 kilometers per second, which I do not think is quite enough to get us there, but doesn't mean I won't be hopeful. Atmospheric autopilot has decided that during time warp we should be nosing down quite a bit. I guess there's just not quite enough air over the wings here at 28 kilometers at 1,000 meters per second to keep us airborne, so it's going to want to pitch us low, gather some speed, which doesn't quite set well with me. I would like to maintain some altitude because I thought maybe we could get to Florida. I don't think it's going to be a thing, but I will turn you back to real time and over to old me as we contemplate what to do next. We are definitely going to abort to Louisiana. Unfortunately, maybe we'll be lucky enough to find an airfield somewhere in this darkness of night. But yeah, it looks like not quite north is where we need to be heading. 14 kilometers altitude, current speed 266 meters per second across the ground. We'll try to get dialed in here at 45 degrees. Whoa, hey there, buddy. Let's hope that atmospheric autopilot doesn't steer us incorrectly and we'll start shifting mass forward. Enjoy some nose down stability at least. We should have the glide slope to make this. Lots of altitude we can shed off. Yeah, that's due north west. 45 degrees should take us right across this area here. We can actually steer south. Oh, we are steering south just a little. Should take us right here. That's our shortest route to landfall, it would appear. It looks like due dead north is, but I think we'd shed too much speed making that much of a turn. So we're just going to dial this in and hope for the best. Let's turn the crew lights on. All right, and away we go. Oh, come on. Wow. Atmospheric autopilot, what are you doing? That sure was worthwhile. Okay. There is closest land over there, so we're gonna go for it, seeing as how we're already only 8 kilometers off the deck and approaching stall speeds. This is going to be interesting. I think we've actually landed here before. Yep, dead north was the quickest way to land. Oh, you know what we can do? Dump stuff. That would have been smart. It would have been a smart thing to do as we were crossing into the Gulf of Mexico and starting to actually slow down. But we don't need our fuel cells anymore, so we'll ditch the liquid hydrogen and the liquid oxygen first, swiftly followed by waste water, and carbon dioxide. We actually don't need much of our thruster fuel anymore either, so we'll go ahead and get rid of some of that. We'll transfer what we do want to save forward just to maintain stability. Look at that. We chanced into a good light of our engines. I should not have dumped a bunch of fuel. Let's go run these suckers dry. Come on. There we go. Let's just open them all up. You can do it. Come on. There we go. Now we got all 4 lit. I'm sure the EPA is okay with this. I certainly am. It means we can put the crew down on dirt. That makes me happy. Climbing and gaining speed. Perfect. We'll just maybe hold the H key to assist a little. I should have done this while pointing at Cape Canaveral. What am I doing? Oh. So we just let the engines run, because why not? We're gonna get rid of a bunch of this fuel. It's gonna make it a little bit easier to land, a little less stress on the landing gear, and absolute guarantee that we are going to make landfall, and maybe even buy us some time to find a suitable landing site. It might even resemble a runway. Just not the one we wanted to land on anyway. Yeah, we're just gonna let the engines run dry. Why not? We don't need them. There we go. Alright, and now we just coast. We'll kill some speed while we look for something nice to land on. Looks like that's more delta, so we're gonna have to deflect at some point. Let's take a look at the map. Yeah, we should clear it. We'll be fine. We're not gonna clear it. We're gonna end up making an about face. There's a nice long stretch of road. That'll wake up the locals. Oh, there's a runway right below me, literally. Great. Not gonna go for that one. We're gonna take this nice and easy. There. That's a runway. Okay, well, let's we're gonna come in that well. Let's turn off time warp. Wow. Yeah. We're gonna try to. Oh man, we are stalling. Oh good. Okay, never mind. Never mind. I thought we were still going really fast. My mistake. So we'll dive in sharp and attempt to build up some speed here, and then get the landing gear out, flare ourselves at a relatively low altitude. We have too much speed now, so we're going to head into some braking S-turns here as we approach this runway, just in a fit of what I hope looks like skill and speed up footage, because it certainly felt more like panic in the moment. But 2 or 3 turns in, we'll get ourselves lined up for the runway. Our speed's down to about 130 meters per second, so we can start making ourselves in for final approach. We'll get good and low before flaring the nose up and then just trying to maintain this glide slope. Now here's old me. A little bit of crosswind, 75 meters, 117 meters per second. We should be right about stall speed. Nice and gentle, Alice. Nice and gentle. You're gonna fly over the entire runway unless you put this bird down soon. 25 meters. 17. 6. Rear gear touchdown. Main gear touchdown. Brakes, brakes, brakes. Friction control, let's just bring that up. Bring ourselves to a nice stop. Perfect. Lots of runway left. Look at that. Nailed it. They're home, they're safe, that's all that matters. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out. I really do appreciate it, and I will see all of you in the next one. So until then, see you later.